Latasha, thank you so much for doing this. I've been inspired by your work over the last few months, as you know, and so being able to learn directly from you and being able to share that is awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I was just saying I have been listening to the show and really enjoying it. So happy to be here.
Thanks. That is also cheating because you might get a sense of what's about to come. One of the first things that came to mind is we'll unpack a lot of what you do today and how you spend your time. But, one of the things I was thinking about is that you get to spend time with a lot of different people,
Mhm.
entrepreneurs, creators, leaders. You have your own podcast, video podcast, all that stuff. I'm wondering if you sort of reflect back, what are some of the commonalities of some of those people that you really admire that are maybe the best of the entrepreneurs and leaders that you spend time with?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Honestly, I think all of those people are just they don't care what people think about them. Honestly, I think that's one of the biggest things. I talk a lot about content creation and I've been trying to figure out like how to get more people to create content. I'm really passionate about it. I think it's so powerful. It's been so powerful for my business. And when people ask me, how do you get clients? It's honestly my YouTube channel. Like that is, 90% of the traffic that comes to my website comes from YouTube. So I'm always trying to sort of kindly convince people to create some content. So I've been asking around, what's preventing you from creating content? And my thought was always, oh, it's time, because it is. It's really time consuming, as you know. But that's not what most people say. Most people say that they are worried what their friends will think or what, strangers will think. They're scared about trolls or, that they'll say the wrong thing. And I think all of the most successful people in that circle, creatives, entrepreneurs, for the most part, they're showing up. Like they're not really thinking about uh the bad that can come of it. They're only looking at the positives. And that's not to say that these folks or myself don't have bad days or don't have bad experiences with trolls or whatever, have days where we get down on it, but I think overall it's seeing that longer term vision and not worrying so much about like the day-to-day insecurities.
Yeah, wow. And if you think about your own YouTube channel, just on that platform alone, I think it was live like in 2008. And so I think you've
Yes.
also had a lot of reps, right? And so I feel
Yeah.
like that's something that is the consistency and being able to show up. You've got to start somewhere. So I love that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my first video, I don't know if you have seen it or if you went back that far, but I was doing totally different content. I actually created my YouTube channel because I was in film school at the time. So it was just a place to put my school projects. And then my first like YouTube content was this it was like a tag video. It's basically like a survey kind of thing. It's really just a cheesy, weird thing that you do in like the makeup community. Like, here's my favorite products of the year and things like that. And I had no idea that there was this like YouTube community. I just saw some girl do it. It was like, oh, that looks fun. And I recorded with this super janky point and shoot camera. I don't even know where it came from. And it was a terrible video. It was terrible. I mean, it's so embarrassing to me, but I just didn't think about it. I was just like, I want to create something. This seems fun. And you just got to dive in. Like your first anything is going to be bad. That's
Yeah.
keep
So
that in mind.
I love to watch those. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
if I meet someone like you, I just filter by videos. And I think it's like instead of most popular, you can do like the oldest to newest or whatever. I love
Yeah.
to see the contrast, like just from the lighting and like
Uh,
like the microphone, whatever it is. Like I love to see the big contrast because it shows
yep.
from like where you started. I think you and I talked a little bit about like Marcus Brownlee. So I was watching his masterclass and he talks about his first video and like he was doing a review of a remote control and it was like horrible lighting, and so like to me that's the beauty of it, is seeing the growth.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're not seeing growth, you're doing something wrong. I would, if my YouTube videos were same consistent quality for all of those years, what am I even
Right.
doing?
Yeah. Let's take a step back too. I'm curious, what did your parents do for a living and how did that impact some of the decisions you made in your life and career?
Yeah. So my mom, she's always worked at a hospital, like in food service. So just kind of like a normal blue collar type job. My dad, he was in the military. He was in the Air Force. And then he went to school to be like an EMT. And I think he did that for a little bit after the military. Unfortunately, he struggled really badly with addiction. So he ended up, when my parents split up when I was about 7, he actually was unhoused for most of like the rest of his life. He passed away a few years ago. So yeah, he didn't really work in his later years, kind of did like odd jobs, construction jobs, things like that. But earlier when I was younger, he did Air Force and healthcare.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm sorry to hear that
Yeah.
as well. What do you reflect and you think back about either your parents, like what was maybe the most important lesson that stands out to you that you learned from them?
Yeah. I mean, so my mom definitely is like that slow and steady, work hard, get stuff done. She was a single mom for most of our lives. And so I definitely got a very strong work ethic from her. Was always encouraged to work, early. I got my first job as soon as I was legally allowed to. I always wanted to work. I saw a lot of, I saw it to be a very empowering thing, a very, I valued my independence, all of that from her. So I definitely got that there. My dad, he was very big into education. And I guess, he grew up a lot more traditional in the sense that his whole family was also a military family. And, all generations, back as far as we can trace really was in the military. So he was very strict. And I actually love that. Sometimes people think of that as this really negative thing. But I got a lot of discipline from him, when to study and, to prioritize school and things like that. And also just the little things like manners, like saying, thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Things like that. I think a lot of people look at that as a negative thing nowadays. Maybe that's a little old school, but I think it's really helped me, just those little things throughout my career.
That's really cool. I appreciate you sharing that. I was thinking about, I saw this one video that you put out a long time ago. Maybe this is like 5 years ago, I forget. But it was like, I don't know if it was like 23 and Me, like your results or whatever. So you said your mom is French Canadian and then your dad's from Jamaica. So I thought that was just like a fun, cool video that you had.
Yeah, for sure. He's from Maryland, but like his
Nationality.
ancestry is, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know everyone always asks me that. So, yep.
That's cool.
Lots of very diverse. My mom was like from the country up in the UP and my dad was from Baltimore area.
Oh,
so
cool.
Just like, totally different perspectives on life.
So did your mom speak French or do you speak French?
I do a little bit.
Okay.
Like her dad spoke it pretty fluently. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. So on this kind of note of family, because we're going to talk about all the things you do, but like one of the things you do is you have this sort of YouTube sort of membership where you have so many valuable videos that anyone can watch. And then you have, I think you call it like some like freelance after dark, or if that's the title.
Yeah.
Right. And you put up more personal videos. And one of them, and don't give away the whole thing because obviously it's part of that, but I'm wondering, you had one of your latest videos was, how did growing up poor make me a better entrepreneur? I'm curious if you could maybe share some of the highlights with me.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, where do I even start? I feel like it really is so much of my entrepreneurship story. I think at the end of the day, like I know how to survive. Like I know how to make something out of nothing. And that kind of helped take some of that fear of entrepreneurship away, because when I really sat down and thought about it, I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? I could fail. I could not get clients. I could, not get work coming in. I've been in that situation before where I've worked a bad job, a very low paying job. And I've always found some side hustle to do or found some second job or, something to do for a friend or whatever. So, I think it kind of took that fear away in that I've experienced being uncomfortable and I know how to get through that. But I'll also say it kind of instills a bit of fear as well, in that I also know what it is like to be like pretty poor. I mean, obviously I grew up in the United States, so that's all subjective. Like I always had a place to live and food to eat and things like that, but like pretty poor for American standards. And it kind of puts a bit of fear and pressure on me too, of like, I don't ever want to be back there again. Like that wasn't fun. I don't have generational wealth and things like that to lean on if I, get into debt. I can't just call my mom to ask her to bail me out or anything like that. So it does also put a little bit of pressure, the other side too, which sometimes can be a little bit less healthy, I think, because it can cause me to overwork a little bit but I also think, when people ask me like, how do you have the endurance? Like, how do you have the energy to create so much stuff? I think it's just that I'm like hungry for it. I think, I make time for it because I really want it. And I think that's definitely a piece of it.
That's really cool. Wow. Yeah, I never thought about that. I mean, I think, it's like inspiring that you can draw from, how you've lived, what you've been through, and those types of things. I think that's really important. And one of the things I kind of heard you say, you didn't maybe say it, but like it's helped you develop a sense of urgency is kind of what I'm gathering, which is really cool.
For sure. For sure.
Okay. So if I want to make sure that I'm thinking through what you do now and how you spend your time, and I put in 4 buckets. Okay. Bucket number 1, you just tell me if I'm wrong here. Bucket number 1 is, we mentioned it earlier, you have this essentially a social media marketing agency yourself, right? So if brands, startups, companies want help, they can come to you for that.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So the second bucket, I think I kind of put it between sort of, you have your group mastermind and then you have like one-on-one coaching in the membership, but I think of that as like a mastermind in itself, coaching.
Yep.
Right. Then I think of courses. You have, I think 6 courses live right now. And I double clicked into the one that I need to finish. Hopefully you're not looking at the progress.
No.
Okay. And then the other is this is like the one that's also incredibly time consuming is the video podcast, and obviously repurpose it into audio and things like that. But are those the 4 buckets? Like, and I'm curious, like, where do you find if you had to kind of percentage it out, like, where do you spend your time the most? And if I butchered anything, just let me know.
Yeah, no, I think that's about everything. From what I can recall. Yeah, no, I think that's about everything. So a couple of years ago, I would say 2019, it was, I would say 75% service-based work. So done for you, social media strategy, social media management. And the rest of that 25% split up between those other buckets. Today, it's actually the reverse. I would say it's actually about like 80% courses are my primary revenue generator in the business. And then I take on, I still think it's important for me to take on projects with clients just to kind of keep me in the know. So I know when I'm talking to my mastermind, when I'm teaching courses, I kind of have a pulse for what's going on in the industry. But I would say it's more like passion project based. They're more projects that I really want to be involved in. I'm not really thinking huge revenue or that's not really how I'm making those decisions with the business. And then, YouTube and the podcast, I don't really monetize through advertisements like sponsorships. I take on a couple, but it's primarily just YouTube AdSense that I'm getting, actually paid for the YouTube channel. And I think the mastermind is a little piece of that too. Mastermind is also, I would kind of put that under more of a passion project. I really enjoy it. And again, I think it's really helpful to talk to the community, to talk to people who are working and doing all these different amazing things. We have like such a diverse group in there. So it just helps make me a better person. So again, I'm not making this huge revenue push for it. It's more of just something I like to do.
That's cool. It's interesting. I was watching one of your videos and then I saw an ad and you're in it.
Like the HoneyBook ad.
Yeah. I was like, hold on, like what is happening here? Like, and I looked, I was like, this is a legit, like, so how did that come about? Is that just kind of random? Like you're in these commercials?
Yeah. It's so funny. That ad is like stalking me. I'm getting like DMs every day. I just saw you in this HoneyBook ad. So HoneyBook is a client management system that I use. I use it a lot when I was doing a lot of one-on-one coaching and service-based work. You can this is not an ad for HoneyBook, but just for context, you can like send invoices and contracts and stuff through there. So I've been using that tool for a long time, and they have a referral program, and I have told my YouTube and podcast audience about it. And I guess I've done well in the referral program. I think I'm one of their top referrers. And so they reached out to me earlier this year and they were like, hey, we want to do like client testimonials. Can we send a crew out to shoot? And I was like, sure, sounds fun. So that's how that all came to be.
Okay, that's awesome. It was well done. I was like, oh my God, this is really cool. I didn't know she was doing these.
It was intense. I vlogged the behind the scenes of that day, and it was a
Oh,
very intense day. It was very fun. Like, they were lovely, but I have a very small office and we had like 10 guys with camera equipment in here, and yeah, it was a lot, but it was fun.
did you learn anything from that experience? No, like obviously your head's down and video production yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I learned that I don't like being in front of the camera unless I'm controlling it. Yeah, I mean, I went to school for film as well, so I'd been on sets before. I've been in like movies and like just as like extras and very
Yeah.
small parts and things like that before. I've done commercial modeling and things like that before. So I've been on shoots before, and every time I do it, I realize I don't really like being the talent, to be honest. I like being the producer, the editor, like the person who's creating the vision for the show. I'm just in front of the camera because I kind of have to, because I don't have somebody else here who I could direct. But if I could, I think that would be my choice, honestly.
That's awesome. That's really
Mhm.
cool. You mentioned like 2019 and 2020 having this shift. I'm wondering, over the last couple of years, sounds like your business has shifted and your interests and passions have shifted a bit. I'm probably just like everybody else.
Mhm.
I'm wondering, what was sort of the high moment and what was the low moment over the last 2.5 years, if you think of like once things shut down?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it's so weird. I was just talking about this the other day to someone. I'm like, I feel like my memory is bad for the past 2 years. I don't know if anyone else can relate. I think it's like that self-preservation thing. Like, I'm trying to protect myself from
No,
all the
actually, I
chaos.
I think I have something wrong with my memory. So I read this book. It's called Moonwalking with Einstein. Have you ever
Okay,
heard of it?
no, no.
It's really good. So I picked it up in a bookstore because I thought it was going to help me improve my memory because it's horrible. My wife reminds me all the time. And so I pick up this book. I'm really enjoying it. And it's about this guy who essentially was like a journalist, and he moves into his parents' basement to
Okay,
study and become the world memory champion. This is
okay.
like a huge community, maybe a small community actually. So the book is about his journey, and he uses a lot of like visualization. So I finished the book. I'm like, wow, it had some amazing lessons in it, like life lessons.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, my memory is the same. It's completely shot. So I
Yeah.
totally understand.
Okay, I got to give that to my husband too, because he actually has a bad memory. But I just have a bad memory for the past 2 years. But so, like 2020, when everything shut down and all of that, I think, like everybody else, I was very, what's going to happen with my business? I was still relatively new. I've only been full time in my business since 2018, so it was still fairly new. Like, I was doing well, but I wasn't, absolutely crushing it. I didn't have like years of savings in the bank or anything like that. So, like everybody else, I was just kind of thinking, how can I like multiply my revenue streams? How can I kind of set up a little emergency fund for myself, like just in case I start losing clients, or I don't know, the whole world economy tanks. I don't know. Nobody knew what was going on. So I actually doubled down on courses during that time. I did a little challenge. Actually, I vlogged it, if you will, on my Instagram stories. And I was like, I'm going to put out a mini course in just a few days. Like, I'm going to give myself a week to put out a new course. I'd already had my original course, which is all about like how to become a social media manager. That had already been in existence and was making a small like stream of income every single month. But I created a video course during like shutdown, the lockdowns. And then I created another course called the Social Media Management Toolbox, which went on to become my best-selling product, actually, in terms of units sold. So I used some of that downtime just to like create stuff that I had sort of been meaning to do, or that my audience had been asking me about. And like, they really outpaced everything else. Luckily, I didn't really lose clients. I had one client kind of scale back, but I was okay, luckily. And I think actually the online education stuff really grew because people were sitting at home and
Oh,
they're
you're right.
like,
You're right. Yeah.
they're like bored. I think a lot of it was people wanted connection. The education is definitely a piece of it, but I think people were lonely. I was lonely. People were bored. And then, yeah, I do think there are the people who also were worried about their jobs, getting laid off or realizing, hey, I have all this extra time now that I'm not commuting to the office. Maybe I can start a business. So they started looking up my videos and my courses, and that's really how things grew.
That's cool. If you think about it, it's almost like your YouTube is an extension of your courses because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just put a video out about your setup with your like audio and video. I would have paid $20 to watch it, so it's like a course in itself. And so it
Yeah.
seems to me like it's very natural. It wasn't like, you had to think of it out of nowhere. I am curious though, like, how did you land on the content? Cause I think that's when you think about what prevents people, it's like, what should I talk about? What should I write about?
Yeah. Yeah. So as far, before the courses came the YouTube channel, and I was just vlogging my life, honestly. I started doing kind of beauty fashion content, not even because I was particularly passionate about that. It was just sort of what was popular at the time on YouTube. And then over time, I, graduated college, got a job in corporate out here in Detroit. So I sort of vlogged that move, vlogged that, new professional journey. And I was working in marketing. So I ended up talking about marketing a lot. And I was also side hustling just because I felt like it. I don't know. It was just fun for me. I just liked doing it. And so people started asking me questions about, hey, you mentioned you're freelancing, you're blogging for this client. What does that all entail? And this is before freelancing was kind of very well known. It was sort of this big mystery to a lot of people. So I was just answering people's questions, honestly, and vlogging my life and sharing things that I was passionate about. I have always been very career driven. So I've always wanted to share that and, been interested in that. So I think, to make that helpful for people listening, I think if you're going to create content about something, you have to like it. I mean, I think a lot of people nowadays want to create content and they're only thinking business, they're only thinking revenue numbers. And I get it. It can be a really powerful tool. Like I said, 90% of my traffic comes from YouTube, but it's really hard to make good content about something that you're not passionate about. Like, people ask me all the time to do like a social media news kind of thing where I'm updating on the algorithm, and like I can't stand the word algorithm. Like it's like banned from my household. I know that I could really crush it doing that, but I just don't want to. Like that's not interesting to me. So I think you just have to like what you're doing to some extent.
There was this recent saying I heard that all research is me search, if I'm saying it right. And you said something I thought was interesting. You said, if you're writing a blog post, make it something that you would want to read and think about the values someone else would get from it. What other advice? And so my thought was like, what other advice would you give someone new doing this? And this is a video you put out like 5 years ago, by the way. So this is like an older video, but I thought about that. And like, that's how, to me, that's like how and I've done the opposite, I think at least once. And the output was not good.
Yeah.
Like it gets, it gets obvious quick.
Yep.
So I love that you kind of reinforce that.
Yeah, that was actually a mentor from years ago told me that. I was blogging at the time, and he said, before you press publish on any blog post, ask yourself, how is it helping someone? And that little reframe, it totally changed the way I create content. And I think, yeah, there's two sides to it, right? You can make a blog post or a video about whatever, like your favorite mugs or I don't know, your favorite tech or whatever it is. Make sure it's helpful though. Just do that double check and say, okay, I'm talking about mugs. Can I share a really great link for a place where I find discounts on mugs? I don't know. Or, is there a way that I can maybe share a recipe, a coffee recipe or something while I'm showing off my mug collection? Like just gives people an actionable kind of takeaway. And for me, like I said, I was just kind of vlogging my life. So instead of just making it like this self-serving, like fun personal thing, I started a series called A Week in My Business, where I still vlog my life, but I focus it around the business and I give little tips and, hey, this week I'm launching a course. Here's a little behind the scenes. Here's some takeaways that you can use. So that way it's not just sort of this voyeuristic, like watching someone live their life. You're actually getting a couple of good little nuggets throughout the content as well.
That's cool. Yeah, I never understood how people do like cleaning videos on YouTube, like just cleaning their house.
I know.
Blows my mind. You mentioned your mentor. I'm curious, like who is one or two folks that maybe have influenced you in the creative or entrepreneur space?
Mm. I mean, yeah, this person was just a real life person. It's kind of a random story, but he's my ex-boyfriend's boss at the time. So my high school boyfriend, he was a graphic designer. And he was like the first freelancer I'd ever met. I was like, wait, what? Like you don't have a job? I don't know. But no, he did. He freelanced for this guy. And so he was an agency owner in my hometown, which I'm from like a smaller college town, like 75,000 people ish in Michigan. And so having a creative agency was very cool. Like there weren't a lot of them. So I learned a lot from him, from both of them really when I was in college and like just kind of navigating those freelance waters, if you will. Um, I actually haven't like worked with a ton of people in a formal way. Like, I don't know
Do,
if you know Hillary. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask, could be like a distant mentor. Sometimes I
Yeah.
think of people whose books I've read who I may have
Yeah,
never met, but I've learned so much. I think of them as a distant mentor.
for sure. For sure. Yeah. I don't know if you know Hillary Rushford or if you've heard of her at all in the community, like the business community, but I've participated in her mastermind for a couple of years. And that was really pivotal for me. I did really learn a lot, met a lot of good people. She's super smart. And I think she has a very similar approach to business as I do in that um, she's all about being intentional, about being, not burning out. That's really important to me because I think in the online space there is so much of that like hustle, grind, and I think I sort of have that naturally in me. So I don't really need somebody else like hammering me over the head to create 10,000 TikToks. Like I actually need the mentorship to like slow down and think about what matters and think the long game and all of that. So I really like her. Gosh, I've read so many books. One of my favorite books that I read earlier this year is The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. Have you read it?
I've seen it so many times. I have not
Yeah.
read it. Maybe I should read it.
Yeah. And one of my friends, actually, I joined just kind of like a self-hosted creative accountability group with three people. One of my friends, Brian, his name's Brian Hall. He was just on my YouTube channel as well. He recommended that book to me. And just in general, I would say like a lot of peer mentoring has been really pivotal for me as well.
Okay, I'll check that book out. I haven't read
Yeah.
half of the books on my shelf, so
Yeah, I know. Story of
I'll
my
add it
life.
to. Yeah. Okay, so you did mention like taking care of yourself, wellness. Like, I'm wondering because I feel like when you're freelancing, and especially when you have sort of your focus on different buckets of business, you can be doing this all day, right? And so, what are some things that you do to make sure that you show up as the best version of yourself at work and at your personal life?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is starting my day quietly. How I start my day it really sets the tone for the rest of the day, particularly if I don't eat breakfast. I am a nightmare for the entire rest of the day. I think that's like one of the worst things that you can do is skip breakfast, eat something, even if it's just like oatmeal. Like you have to start your day in a good, healthy way. So, and for me, that's also been eliminating screens as much as I can in the morning, not waking up and just immediately scrolling. But even further than I try my best to have like a no phone in bed rule. I'm not always perfect about that. But even further than that, it's not getting on my phone until after I have had breakfast, hung out with my husband, like had just like a normal life, taken a walk, done something for myself. Then I'm going to start, opening screens and things like that. And then speaking of screens, I've been on a huge journey actually this year to cut down on social media usage in general, which I know is kind of weird because I work in social media, but I really have been very intentional about scrolling. I've really like curated Twitter lists and things like that so that I'm not just getting on Twitter and seeing like everything that is Twitter, which
Interesting. Yeah.
I love Twitter. It's like my favorite platform, but it's also extremely overwhelming. I found I was getting like just depressed every time I was getting on the app because there's always something to be sad about in the world. And that's the first thing that's there to greet you. So being intentional about what you're looking at and also how often I'm looking. So I actually try to only look at social media when I'm happy. That's something that I just kind of pay attention if I'm already feeling down or if it's like really late at night and you're already tired. Usually that's when those negative feelings are going to bubble up to the surface. So I really only look at social media to scroll like on the weekends now, mostly. I'm just
Ooh,
like, yeah, having, hanging out. And then it's fun. It doesn't feel like this pressure or work or so much negativity.
that's cool. I love that idea of just being more conscious. I know the apps like track how much you're on it, but it's hard. It's like sort of you fall down this hole of social media. It's hard to like recognize that you're in it.
Yeah.
How do you dial in your sleep? Do you have any kind of nighttime routines similarly in the morning?
I wish I did. I am a terrible person to ask about this because I am a night owl. I've gotten better over the years about just trying to get to bed before midnight is really good for me. Um, but I'm not great about it because I do feel very creative and very inspired at night. I get so many great ideas. There's so many
Interesting.
times when I actually wake up in the middle of the night and I keep a notebook next to my bed and have to write ideas down. So that's something that I'm always working on. But I did start tracking my sleep. I bought a Fitbit this year, which has helped because just seeing those reports, and you're like, oh my goodness, I only got, 6 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep. That's really not good. Being aware, I think, is the first step. So yeah.
What do you need to feel good? 6.5?
Yeah, 6.5. I feel seven is good. Seven,
Okay.
I feel great in the morning.
Okay. That's helpful. So you make a lot of this sort of look easy. I'm wondering what was the inflection point for you to say, I'm going this route? I know it might have been a
Mhm.
transition and the pandemic probably accelerated things for you in certain areas, but like
Mhm.
what I'm wondering, what was that moment that you're like, you know what, I'm going to chart this course?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, like the pandemic with the online education stuff, not only did I see just the potential with it as far as semi-passive income, but I also started connecting with people more, like connecting with my students more, which really put things into perspective. Because before I was working with a lot of companies, which is also very rewarding in its own way, but I don't know. I feel like I have much less impact working on this large team, or, maybe sometimes a team that's not fully aligned with my values necessarily, than being able to help an individual and getting those messages saying, hi, I just quit my job, or I just started my business, or I just, signed a 4-figure contract after taking your course. Like that stuff is really amazing and just makes me feel good. So I think I finally got to the point where I was, aligning that I guess market success, the profitability with what actually just felt good inside. And so that felt really good. As far as leaving to go freelance in general, a couple of years prior, for me, it was really, I kind of felt like I had to. I felt like my mental health was actually just really being impacted by the way that I was living and working. My job was pretty good. Like for a corporate job, I was really happy most of the time. I worked from home a lot, but even still, there were just certain freedoms that I just didn't, you just don't have. Like
It
I
was a
had
big
to.
company, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Fortune
that's what I thought.
500
Yeah.
staffing company. Very traditional, like, pretty old school. Although, like I said, we did work from home, which was nice a lot of the time. But yeah, it was just, it was just, I didn't feel that freedom necessarily. And I never thought that was something that was very important to me. But over the years, I realized it's incredibly important to me, just being able to like get up and go to the go to a doctor's appointment if I need to, or go to the grocery store. Like little things like that really matter to me. And for me, I mentioned like my father, he passed away in late 2018. And that was kind of a big wake up call for me, actually, because, my mom, she's only 2 hours away, but I wanted to just like go hang out with her more. Like life's short. And so that kind of accelerated the freelancing thing too. I was like, I just want to be able to do what I want a
Yeah.
little bit more. Yeah.
It's like the integration. And I think people are more open to talking about it now, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's work-life integration, right? Not necessarily
Yeah.
work-life balance. Do you have any siblings nearby or any siblings in general?
Yeah, just one sister, 5 years older.
Oh, cool. Okay. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yep.
I think the personal connection, especially after the last few years and having a support system. I mean, to your point,
Yeah,
like having some flexibility is great. And then you can't beat having that system around you.
for sure.
Um, I was thinking about maybe over the last couple of years, your most proudest accomplishment. Is that sort of, it feels to me so far that it is enabling others to kind
Mhm.
of launch their own business. Is there like a kind of a thing that comes to mind outside of that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely say from a career aspect, it would be that. I mean, particularly a program that I offer, it's called the Social Media Management Accelerator. It's a cohort-based course, which my goal with that was really to almost model a college classroom. And so I offer it just a couple times a year. It's pretty intense. Like for me, it's a big effort. But it does really well. And we also just see the highest completion rates and like the biggest success stories from that. So that was a big goal of mine. It wasn't something that I don't know. I didn't think I was there yet. I didn't think I was at the point where I could fill up a cohort with 100 students. And so that was really exciting. And not only could I fill up the cohort, but they actually walked away with stuff and are, pretty much all still working and really thriving right now. But I would also say it's going back to the, being more intentional thing on a personal level. Like I felt like I was so addicted to my phone, so addicted to social media, so addicted to, caring what other people thought about me, I think. And I'm not saying that I've like kicked that totally, but I think I'm doing so much better with it over this past year in particular.
Yeah. It sounds like you can almost be, especially when you're teaching others about social media and like how to manage brands and things like that. Like it can almost be all consuming,
Yeah.
right? Like how do you turn that off?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And you have to be dialed in a little bit. You have to, but like I said, you can kind of pick what you're consuming and also how much you're consuming. You're not getting anything from scrolling, for 4 hours. Like at a certain point, you're just becoming a robot. You're
Yep.
not actually taking anything in and you're just seeing a lot of garbage. But if you give yourself 30 minutes a day or, an hour over the weekend or whatever that looks like for you, you'll be a lot more intentional with what you consume and you'll actually be taking some good stuff away from it.
I love that. What about when you think about a failure that you've learned the most from
Hmm.
in the business you're in now? What
Yeah.
comes to mind as sort of the thing that sort of ignites you?
Hmm. I mean, I failed a lot. I'll be honest. It's funny that you asked that because I was thinking for this new year coming up, I think I want to do a video about all the times that I've failed this year because we always talk about all of our successes of the year, but I'm like, I've messed up a lot this year. Um, you
Can I
know,
preface it with one thing?
yeah,
So I was talking to Guy Raz, who's like a
yeah,
hero of mine, and how I built this. It's all about successes, right? Like
yeah,
nobody wants to listen to a podcast about people who failed. They want to hear about it sprinkled in to the success. And he said, to me, that's the most interesting thing. And I've always um, almost shied away from even asking the question. And I've heard I know you've heard this. Like I've heard someone say, what's your most glorious failure and all these things. But he said that's where we really learn the most from. And so like
yeah,
I'm trying to be intentional about learning from my own failures, but other people's as well, because I think people can learn from that. And I think there is the failures that we can think about that are micro that maybe other people wouldn't even thought about. But then there's those times where you're like, you know what? Like, yeah, like then this is maybe what I would have done differently. And this is what I learned from it. And this is what maybe other people can sort of draw from that. And so I'm sure you
yep.
probably failed a lot less than you think. So I don't know if it could fill up the whole episode, but I'm curious if there is one that comes to mind that you think other people can learn from.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that does come to mind, the mastermind thing, has been a journey. I started my first mastermind, I don't know, a few years ago, and it was, by all intents and purposes, it was a failure. Like, it, I got a few people to sign up, but it wasn't what I was looking for, or wasn't my goal. But I think more importantly than the numbers aspect, I actually had somebody in the group who was very toxic, I guess. She was very not aligned with what I teach and what I recommend to folks. And so I learned a lot about community management and like vetting people and curating a group. It's really hard to do. But I do think it's really important. And don't get me wrong, I think it's important to have different perspectives. I'm not saying that. But she was just kind of preaching some really negative things and being, not a great teammate. So that was something that I had to learn. And especially over the years, as my products and offerings have grown to include so much more of that community, I really had to learn from that and learn how to curate a little bit better. So that was one of my biggest ones, I think. And the reason it was such a big one is because I think she really hurt a lot of people. I think she really offended people who then I had to go back and kind of fix those relationships with, because they were important to me. So it's fine if someone says something negative about me, I can handle it, but I never want somebody else in the group, like who's going in to learn, being vulnerable, to then get, that negativity.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think there's so many, it sounds like there's so many like little things you have to think about when you're having any kind of group function, in-person dinner. I think about like that book, like Mastermind Talks or whatever, Mastermind Dinners, whatever it is, right? Like there's so many nuances that you got to think about, and you can't control people necessarily. Right. And so that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I've got a few questions I'd love to just sort of rapid fire and just get your thoughts on, if that's cool. Okay. Is there such a thing as over preparing?
Yes, absolutely. I like to tell people take messy action. I have taken messy action my entire career. I wish, sometimes I get on like podcasts or people will ask me, how did you have the vision to start your YouTube channel? And I'm like, I literally didn't. I just picked up this janky camera. I thought it sounded fun. I wish I could say that I was this great visionary. I was not. And same thing for really anything that I've launched. I've had a goal, I've had an idea. But really it's just me kind of trying things out and seeing what sticks. Some things haven't, some things I've retired. Some things, whatever, were kind of a fail. You move on, you learn from it. You just have to start before you're ready, I think, and start with what you have. You're never going to have like the perfect set, the perfect equipment. People say that to me all the time. I'm like, I'm still definitely not where I want to be. Like I have way bigger goals for the podcast and things like that. But you just got to start with what you have.
I watched your last video about like setting stuff up, and it inspired me to take this out of storage.
Nice.
Don't know how to use it yet, but it's in front of me now. So it's
nice.
I think it's good advice. It's interesting. Like there's no right or wrong answer. And I love to hear people's why behind that. So it's interesting. What gets in the way of you doing your best work?
Time. I really wish that I had, just a few more hours in the day. I mean, I think, doesn't everybody say that? But yeah, for me, it's definitely not creativity. It's definitely not ideas. My mind is just always, I'm like, I have 2 different shows that I want to create next year, different podcasts. I'm like, I just can't. I have no time for it. So obviously I could scale my team. That's one option. But that's been hard for me. And I've realized over the years also, I kind of just really like working alone or with a very small team. So that's something that I'm very much figuring out, is how can I get more time back, either by hiring or by, I don't know, I got to figure that out. So that's kind of the journey that I'm on right now.
Well, it sounds like you do a lot of your own editing. And so like, I imagine there's things you actually enjoy doing, but like, even though it would save you hours if you outsourced, right? So it's a balance.
Yeah.
What do you do to get back on track if you are off track? I mean, you might be traveling for work or something like that. Maybe you're off track and your routines. What do you do to get back on track quickly?
Sleep for like a day. I love sleeping, or just like having a day where you truly do nothing. And those are very far and few between for me, because even on days off or weekends, I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to go work out, or I'm going to go, do something for the house, but that's still like work in some to some degree. So having a day where I just say a couch day does wonders for me, for my mind, body, soul. Just having a day, every few months to do nothing.
When was the last time you changed your mind about something in a really meaningful way?
I mean, going back, I think to the team thing, I would say that one of my long-term team members left earlier this year. And I was initially like, okay, got to replace this person. But I said, let me just sit down with it. Like, let me think and pay attention to how I feel. Not just what I think everybody is telling me I should do. And I think in the entrepreneurial community, that's what everybody says. It's like scale, hire a team, like that makes you legitimate. But to your point, I really love editing. And I think I'm really good at, I'm not really good at it, but I'm good at it.
Pretty good.
I'm efficient.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I realized like, I don't actually want to give that up. I actually want to do that. And yeah, I might not be quite as productive on other things, but we'll move things around. We'll figure it out. And that's where I've been. It's been a few months of me doing all my own stunts, I guess, again. And I've really been more connected to the work than before. So I feel good about it now. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, cool. I was thinking about a video you put out years ago, and you were talking about family. And then you said, I don't have kids yet, but I want to wait until I get my ducks in a row. And I'm curious, do you have kids yet?
No. And I'm really curious when that video was now, because I don't plan on having children actually. Yeah, I think there was a period of time, and I think that it might've been pandemic time. Things got really weird. That was the only time in my life that I was like, maybe I do want kids. But pretty much my whole life, I've been pretty solidly, no, I don't want kids. And I think I'm back off the fence onto, I don't want kids again. So,
okay. I was going to ask you, do you think you can live, this is super fascinating to me. Do you think you can live a fulfilled or happy life not having kids? And it sounds like yes.
Yeah.
On your part. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. But I think this is something that like child-free people don't talk about a lot. It is a question. Like, I think both sides will always have that question of, well, what if we didn't have kids, or what if we did? Like, to pretend that you don't ever think that, I think it's not true, right? We all wonder about the path that we didn't take. So yeah, I do. I wouldn't say I'm concerned about that, but I do think about that. Like, okay, what is my life going to look like? How can I have meaning and impact in my life if that's not what I do? And I will say, I am an aunt, and I think we have to put, this is my crusade to put respect on aunties' names, because they're very important. Like my aunts were and my uncles as well, were so important to me growing up. And so I take a lot of pride in that role. And I think there's just so many ways that you can have impact on the world, outside of just having children. There's a book, if anyone's interested, called The Baby Decision. If anyone's on the fence, very straightforward.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah. It's a good one. It really did help me like solidify what I want to do.
There was a psychologist I talked to on the podcast a long time ago, and he said, I know plenty of parents who are happy. I know plenty of moms who are also miserable. So yeah. I think it's an interesting life decision. Okay. Sure. Is there a quote that you carry with you in good or tough times?
Oh man, a quote that I carry with me.
Are you a quote person?
I don't think I am. I'm like, this is bad because I read so many books. Oh, you know what? I mean, this is kind of like marketing related, so I don't know if this is interesting, but Donald Miller's building a story brand. I say this probably 20 times a day. If you confuse, you lose. So I always, and speaking of having so many ideas and feeling so creative and sometimes feeling a little all over the place, that sort of helps rein me in sometimes, is like, all right, but you don't need to have 5 different things that you're doing right now. You don't need to have 5 different podcasts. Like, stay on message, put everything into that, and try to have that cohesive message.
I love that. You mentioned books. Are there a couple that come to mind, any topic that have made a big impact on you that you recommend other people read?
Yeah, so many. I mean, like marketing books, definitely building a story brand. I think that's a really good one. Books, Walden, was like one of the first books that I really loved and really got me thinking about like our connection to nature and just being intentional with your time and just living a little bit. So that one for sure.
It's called
Um,
Walden, like
yes.
WALD. Okay.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, it's Henry David Thoreau book. So like early transcendentalist essays, really. And yeah, I mean, I would say those are some of my big ones. The War of Art, like I said, has been really powerful for me in just taking that messy action. He really talks about just getting up and writing every day. I'm in the process of writing a book right now. And so that's really helped me just stay disciplined about it. We don't think about that. We always think about creativity as something that just comes to us. Like I said, in the middle of the night where you get these like amazing ideas you have to write down, but that's not always how it works. Like it's also like a muscle. You have to train yourself to be creative and just get up and do it every day. So that
Yeah.
one's really helpful if you're struggling to take action.
That's cool. And not everyone can go into a log cabin, right, for a month and just bang
Which
out
would
the
be
book.
so nice. I wish. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
What are two or three general pieces of life or career advice? If you're talking to someone early on in their career and they want to make an impact in this world, what are a few pieces of advice that you would impart on them?
Yeah. Take every role, every life situation that you're in and be the best at it that you can be. This was actually something one of my early managers when I was working retail in high school and college told me is, every single job she ever had, whether that was working, at the mall or, whatever, she tried to be the best at that role that she could be. And she is like one of the most talented people. She's like this superstar district manager. Like she was, the most amazing boss ever. Yeah, I think that's really important. I think sometimes we think long game, especially when you're really young. It's like, oh my gosh, I just want to, whatever your ultimate career goal is. And you'll get there, but you have to like put those building blocks in place and really nurture those stepping stones that you're at as well. So try to be the best that you can be at whatever role that is, whether that's a student, whether that's working retail, working at Starbucks, whatever, be the best you can be at that job. Because all of those things bring you to where you are. Like all of my life experiences, all of my job experiences have brought me here. It's not just, starting my business in 2018. That's absolutely
Right.
not the case.
I mean, you're one of those people I think about of like, you might be in one career when you start, but I think like have line of sight that might not be the thing, but that experience might take you to the next thing. And so
Exactly.
I love how you illustrated that. Is there anything you feel like we missed or like you'd like to add that maybe I overlooked?
I don't think so. I think this was really, I hope it's helpful for your audience. Yeah, it was good to walk down memory lane, I guess.
Yeah, no, I love this. Obviously, like the work you put out, I'm always learning from your videos and even joining the community. Um, for someone like me balancing a couple things, there's so many
Mhm.
micro decisions that like can weigh on somebody or like not figure out if you go left or right. And so the stuff that you're doing to me is incredibly helpful. And I found out through like the YouTube videos, right? And so I hope you continue to do what you're doing. And I appreciate just watching from the sidelines and continuing to learn from you. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me again.